Only invest in good companies. There's a table that we publish every year now, and it's a look-through. So if we take all the companies in our portfolio and we calculate those 6 operating measures that you can see on the left-hand side there, ROC, or return on capital employed, gross profit margin, difference between revenues and the cost of goods sold, operating profit margin, after all expenses, cash conversion, what percentage of the profits arrive in cash, leverage, how much debt do they use, and interest cover, how safe is their cover for their interest and lease payments. And we compare them over time, and we compare them with the 2 main indices that we look at. And you can see that on the major measures that we look at, our companies, A, don't vary very much, and B, they are much better than the index. So if you take the return on capital employed, you can see that last year it was 29%. It's varied a little around the period, but not a great deal. And it's getting on for twice the average of the FTSE or the S&P 500, basically. That, in our view, is the single biggest measure of whether or not you've got a good business. What's the return on capital employed? We look at the gross margin. Not a lot of people do look at the gross margin. So companies take in stuff or services. So they take in labor and they take in components and ingredients, and they turn them into products or services they sell to their clients. They make a markup between those 2 things. Otherwise, they're not in business at all. They're in a charity. And our companies had a gross margin last year of 65%. You can see it's always been around the 60s. The index is about 40%. As I always say, to put it in English, our companies make things for 4 and sell them for 10, whereas companies in the index make things for 6 and sell them for 10. One is clearly better than the other. Okay. Then out come all of the other expenses of businesses, so their expenditure on product development, R&D, sales, general and administration expenses, and you get down to the margin that most people commonly quote, which is the operating profit margin, where you can see our companies last year were 28%, the index about 15 or 16%, so twice as good. Cash conversion, what percentage of profits arrive in cash? Not all profits arrive in cash. Our companies, as you can see, pretty consistently convert about 100% of profits into cash, slightly down last year. Leverage, I wrote about this in the letter. It looks like the leverage has ticked up on our companies to 46%, and it's about the same as index. If I was going to drop one number from this table, it would be that one. It's an average between some wildly different figures, and is therefore verging on the meaningless. We have 9 companies with net cash in this calculation. We have one company that has 2,000% gearing on this measure because it doesn't have any capital. It's great. It's a tremendous business. It uses other people's capital because it's a franchising business. And so the average is relatively meaningless. This is a better measure, interest cover. So on that debt, they've got to pay interest. On their leases, they've got to pay rents. How much cover have they got for their profits for that? You can see our companies have got 17 times cover versus about half that on the index. So look, there aren't very many things that I could promise you, even if I wasn't under various legal constraints about what I'm allowed to promise. But even if I were utterly free, there's probably only about one that I would actually nail my colours to the mast on. We own good companies. That's the one that I would stick to.